Charles, the Duke of Somerset, Master of the Horse, was described as having a very black complexion as well as being a lover of music and poetry. George Fitzroy, the Duke of Northumberland, son of King Charles II, was described as being a tall black man, like his father, the king. Charles, the Duke of St. Albans, who was another son of King Charles II, was described as having a black complexion. Charles Fitzroy, the Duke of Grafton, grandson of King Charles II, was described as a tall black man. These are just a few of the descriptions of the British aristocracy in the year 1733 found in the book called The Memoirs of the Secret Services of John Mackay. John Mackay went around England and Scotland and wrote descriptions of the nobility, dukes and aristocracy that he saw. The book was written for and commissioned by the British royalty at the time, Princess Sophia to be specific, in order to provide intelligence. This is the original manuscript. Out of all of the English and Scottish royalty and nobles in the book, 19 were described as brown-complexioned, which you could argue were white people with a tan. However, 23 of them were described as black or very black-complexioned, including John, the Duke of Newcastle, who was described as black and ruddy-complexioned. Charles Leynos, another son of King Charles II, the Duke of Richmond, who was described as having a black complexion. Sidney, Lord Godolphin, Lord High Treasurer of England, who was described as thin and very black. Daniel, the Earl of Nottingham, who was described as being black like a Spaniard. The Spaniard is a reference to the Moors, who were very numerous in Spain just 200 years before this was written. The Earl of Kingston was described as having a black complexion. We can also see here that Richard Lumley, the Earl of Scarborough, was described as having a brown complexion. Here, Thomas Tufton, the Earl of Thanet, was described as a thin, tall, black, red-faced man of 50 years old. Richard, the Earl of Ranelagh, was described as black. Heneage Finch, the Lord Gernfay, was described as a black man. Montague Venables Bertie, Earl of Abingdon, was described as having a black complexion. John, the Archbishop of York, was described as a black man. So what happened to all these black British nobles, earls, and the general black British population? Well, many had offspring with the local white population, which resulted in their descendants being classed as white phenotypically. However, during the 18th century, many black Britons were also either killed, emigrated to the colonies, in particular the Caribbean, or they were captured and sold into slavery and shipped from Britain to places like Jamaica and Barbados. We will go into more details on how this happened exactly in another video. For now, we will continue with this book. Mr. Methuen, ambassador to the King of Portugal, was described as a black man. Mr. Stanhope, envoy extraordinary to the States General of the United Provinces, was also described as a black man. The Earl of Orkney was described as a black man. Sir Charles Harrow, Lieutenant General, was described as a black man. Sir Stafford Fairbairn, fat and swarthy, of a Moorish complexion. Rear Admiral Wilhart was described as a black man. Lord Belhaven was described as black. The Earl of Home was described as a black man with sanguine complexion. The Earl of Melfort was described as black.